welcome to the channel. I'm excited you're here. I'm excited to talk about some things that are pretty important to me. Let's dive in. So I have kind of like three main topics that I'm going to cover, and I'll break everything down. The first being Bernard Hill passed away recently. Phenomenal actor, and it affected me in a way that I wasn't really expecting. It hit me differently. I got pretty emotional when I found out about it. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't want this to sound callous or insensitive. It doesn't bother me so much when celebrities pass away. I mean, it does to some extent. Like, it's always sad, they're human beings. But it's easy for me as someone who's into filmmaking and acting and storytelling to kind of separate the actor from their characters and from their real lives and from my life. So there's some distance there. So it is sad. It's a human being that has passed away, but usually it's like, you know, I don't know them personally. With Bernard Hill, it was just different. I found out and I just was like pretty sad. And I was like, same thing though. It's like, I don't know him. And even though I know he's a great actor, I haven't seen his whole filmography. I've seen, you know, several of his films. I was like, well, why is this hitting me so hard? And then I came to the realization, at least in part, as to why. And I just figured I'd talk about it. And I wanted to break it down and discuss it with you because maybe other people are feeling the same way. And I just think there's a lot of cool things that we can talk about and ponder and find meaning in. So I realized the reason it affected me so deeply is because specifically of his portrayal of King Théoden in The Lord of the Rings. That may be a little odd that one performance affected me so much, but it did. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings in general. I've read the books, I've watched the movies countless times, the extended versions, all of that. I remember being a kid seeing the movie in theaters when it came out and I loved those films, and I loved the casting choices. Every actor was great, and he as Théoden was just so well cast, and I loved it, and he was so noble and courageous. I don't know. There's so much more I could say about it, but I loved it as a kid, and then even now as an adult, I feel like it means even more to me because of what it meant as a kid, and because I've grown and I've matured and I've thought on the things that I'm going to dive into, and I've pondered these things, and so every time I see his performance, it's like I see more nuance or subtlety or more richness or more truth in it, and it really is something that I'm able to mull over every time I watch it. It's his performance, and it's also the character and together, and it's pretty phenomenal because there's things about the character that I love in general from the books. There's certain creative decisions that were made in the movie that I wasn't the biggest fan of at the time, but I realized again as a storyteller, and the more I watch the films, that it doesn't strictly take away from the story or the character ultimately. I think Peter Jackson and team did a great job, and by the end of Return of the King, the movie, I feel like they did the character of Théoden well. I feel like ultimately they portrayed who Théoden is. If you watch it all, I'm like, yeah, they got it right. They got his nobility right. They got his humility and his courage right. And couple that with Bernard's performance, it was fantastic. So even in those decisions that I wasn't a huge fan of, his ability to dive into the character and be really rooted in like a real person really made Théoden come alive, and by the end of it I believed that he, you know, was Théoden. Like that's how good it was. It's like, oh yeah, that's King Théoden. So why does the character of Théoden matter so much, and why do stories like this impact us? Well, the story of Théoden is a story of redemption. It's an archetypal story that we all yearn for. You know, it may be subtle in some cases, and also may be very overt, and you know, I'll touch on that in a second. If you look throughout all of history, if you look throughout mythology, folklore, modern storytelling, we are drawn to these types of characters and to the types of stories that they fall into. People like King David, he did some pretty bad things, but God still made him one of the greatest kings ever. Moses, he killed somebody, he ran away from responsibility, but then God used him to liberate a people. In the Bible, the woman caught in the act of adultery, Jesus said to those around her who were about to stone her, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." And they all walked away because we've all done bad things, and she was liberated and freed in that moment. You get to more modern storytelling. We've got Darth Vader in Star Wars. You know, there's prophecy that he's going to bring balance to the Force, but he goes to the dark side, you know, and does horrible, horrible things. Yet at the end of his life, and sadly it is at the end of his life, but better than absolutely never, he redeems himself. He stops the Emperor and he brings balance to the Force and comes back to the light. If you're into animation, you might have seen the cartoon show Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I've already, you know, said some things that might be spoilers. I feel like Star Wars is old enough now to where that's not a spoiler. Spoilers for Avatar, there's the character of Prince Zuko. Some pretty bad things happen to him. He becomes bitter and resentful and angry, and he mistreats people around him and his uncle. And you might think that he has every right, but you can see that it's a path that's going to lead him to destruction if he doesn't do something about it. And he ultimately realizes he can't try to align himself or find himself right in the eyes of someone who is evil, the Fire Lord, his father. He realizes he wants to be respected and honored, but why would you want to be honored by a horrible person? So he becomes good. And we love those stories. We love stories of redemption, and we think about ourselves that way. It's like, have I fallen too far? Have I messed up too much? Can I come back from this? Will someone forgive me? We want to know that we can be courageous, that we can be honorable, that we can do good, that we can help people around us. And Théoden exemplifies all these things. I'm going to touch on the deliverance scene of King Théoden, because we see in the book and the film that he's under a spell by Saruman. Grima has been lying to him, and they're subtle lies. And that's what's special about this, because we're used to that. We're getting information around us all the time. Good, bad, evil, light, dark, loud, soft, and it's just constantly coming at us. But when we get stuff that comes in and it's so subtle, it doesn't seem like a lie strictly, and we don't address it, well, that thing can fester. That thing can be planted. That's like a seed, and it will grow. And the more those lies, those subtle lies come in, you'll become overgrown with falsehood, and you won't be able to see or hear clearly. So if the truth comes your way, it'll be hard to hear. If a big lie comes your way, it'll be hard to decipher, because we see that. We see Grima blatantly lying to Théoden, and he can't tell the difference. And then Gandalf comes and he delivers him. He breaks the spell. In this segment of the story, Gandalf is very much a Christ-like figure. And I'm a believer, so I'm going to be using certain terminology and language, and these are my personal beliefs. I still think you can find value in the things that I'm saying, so hang in here with me. I think we can learn some stuff together. So in this process, he's helping Théoden see that he's been deceived, and he's speaking to the liar. He's speaking to Saruman, the accuser, and he's telling him to be gone. And when he's gone, this gives clarity to Théoden, and he can recognize who he is. And when we recognize who we are in Christ, we step into his kingdom, and we step into a familiarity, to a relationship, to royalty. The Bible says that we are joint heirs with Christ, which is an incredible thing. So when we know who we are and what we need to be stepping into, it's easier for us to put away the lies and to put away stagnation, and we can have energy, and we can have the ability to pursue good things and have courage. The truth sets us free. And as I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about Théoden and that he's a king, I've been thinking about kingship. And this idea came to me that honorable kingship brings humility. And we see this in Théoden. When he comes out of the spell, he doesn't just pretend like everything's fine. He doesn't pretend like, oh, that didn't happen, now let's go save the world. He realizes, oh man, what have I done? I've let things start to crumble around me. Where's the Rohirrim? Where's Éomer? He's trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and he's like talking to Gandalf and Aragorn and all them, and he's getting up to speed, and he's like, what do we need to do? And he's going low. He's not saying like, oh yeah, I messed up, but who are you guys to tell me what to do? I'm so great. He doesn't raise himself up. He doesn't be like, oh, well, I'm king and I realized I was being lied to, but whatever, that happens to everybody. He doesn't stay in this place of arrogance. He comes into a place of humility, and when you do that, that's honorable. People see that. It's like, oh, he admitted his mistakes, but he's not staying in that. He's not staying in his shame. He's not blaming other people. He's doing something about it. And that makes you want to serve a person like that, help a person like that. And so that brings you into a place of humility as well. Honorable kingship brings humility. Humble, kingship brings honor. It's a reciprocal, beautiful thing. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I believe good kings go first. And this is what I mean. So again, there can be difference of opinion on this, but if you study history or whatever, there's times in battle like when kings would literally go first. They would go out with their men on the front line. Now, it's a very dangerous and risky thing to do, obviously, and they would have people around them to protect them. There's times when the king wouldn't go first, and they'd lay back, and they'd see how the battle goes. They'd see the weak point. They'd see that the men are faltering, and then the king would go out, and they would rally to the king. It would invigorate their spirits, and they would press forward stronger and win the victory. Just to say that a king stays back doesn't mean they're a coward. There's strategy to all of that. But aside from the context of warfare, you don't want a king who's always in hiding. You don't want a king who is not even willing to go out to battle. You know, like, you don't want someone who's not willing to do the work of a king, who's not willing to lead or be courageous. Someone who just lets their advisors do everything for them constantly. It's like, where's the actual leadership? Who's really in charge? Why are they afraid? Why should I trust this person? So a good king goes first, in my opinion, and I think that we can all admire that in the people that we follow. We see that boldness in action draws out the best in all of us. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is that even kings desire the true king. And you can see this in the character of Théoden. This is what I mean. When Gondor calls for aid and Théoden answers, and they take the Rohirrim and they go to the battle of the Pelennor Fields, Théoden knows that if they don't go, the world's gonna end. They're all gonna die. Instead of elevating himself and being like, I'm such a great king, like, after this battle, like, I'm gonna be this high king, or I'm gonna take over Gondor. Gondor's gonna be our land if I come help. Because there was no king at the time, but he knew Aragorn, and he knew that Aragorn, even though he wasn't crowned yet, would be crowned king if he sought the throne. And he knew the character of Aragorn. He knew the humility in him. He knew that Aragorn was always willing to go first as well. So instead of exalting himself, he knew that he wasn't going to live forever, and he knew that there had to be a king that he could pledge his service to, and likewise someone that would unify with him and help him. We know that throughout all of history, the kings made alliances all the time. Certain times throughout history, in certain regions, there would be high kings that all the other kings would submit to that king's authority. As human beings, whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of literature, whether you're religious or non-religious, that support the fact that we desire to worship something or serve someone. I've got my beliefs. I believe in Jesus. Jesus is the King of Kings. He is the highest. There's no greater king than him. It is exemplified through Théoden in his willingness to serve another king who wasn't even acknowledged yet by Denethor or the people, but he was the rightful king. He knew that, and so he still went into unity with that, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm not trying to offend anybody or get anybody mad when I talk about these things, but I'm just trying to point out that I know so many people who don't agree with me on many things, who love this character, they love that story and many stories like it. And I just want to just throw it out there to ask you to think about that, and like, why do you like it so much? Why do you think you like it? And again, you can disagree with me, but I think it's a great conversation, and I think people are yearning for the truth. They're yearning for purpose and things in their lives that are going to pull them out of the mire. Things that are going to be like, yeah, I don't have to be stagnant. I don't have to look at my shame. I don't have to live in my sin and in my wrongdoings, even though they're horrible things that are in my past. God can redeem you and pull you out of that and tell you who you are in him, and you can step forward and you can be courageous and you can be kingly or queenly, whatever. You can be royal, you can be noble and honorable. And so, as I said before, I'm so grateful for Bernard Hill, and I pray that he's with God and at peace. I'm so thankful for his performance, and I pray for blessings for his family and his loved ones, and I'm so grateful for the gift that he was to this world and to me and to so many people I know. It's a powerful performance, a powerful work of art, and I hope, again, that you found joy in this conversation, that you've found meaning in the idea of what it means to be a king, to walk in identity and to know who you are, and that it's good to be noble, it's good to be good. You know, like, I hope that you found value in this conversation, whether you like Lord of the Rings or just story about kings or Bernard Hill. Thank you guys for listening so much. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, share it, subscribe. Tune in next time. I'll be talking about topics like this all the time. Thank you for your time, as always, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.